right, I want this paintbrush.
This is the paintbrush that's the high quality, super expensive eggs with like the full bodied flavor. And that is the 88 yen a box paintbrush, which will then like blow my mind and make me take off my clothes. Is that what happens?
Well, you don't take your clothes off. They explode off of you. It's like a passive thing. You're making it seem more active than it actually is.
Food Wars.
Welcome back to the bookcases.
We don't have an intro.
I am Stin.
I am Taylor, and yes, today we are talking about Food Wars. And while we talk about Food Wars, we are painting our nails because we wanted to paint our nails, and why not do both at the same time?
The forbidden finger food.
So you recommended Food Wars to me. You were like, Taylor, you should read Food Wars. The only thing I knew about Food Wars was it was the anime where people's clothes blow off. And it is in fact a manga where people's clothes blow up. Why did you recommend this to me?
So I recommended Food Wars to you primarily because it was weird. And
is that all?
Oh yes. It's weird, and it's actually a very good example of sort of non-battle shonen type storytelling. And we haven't quite gotten into like the battle element of it, at least not in the core story, but you kind of got a taste for that because the manga that you checked out from the library had like the pilot sort of chapter 0 in it.
Yes, we'll get to that in a moment. But yeah, Food Wars, for those who do not know, Food Wars is a manga turned anime about our main character boy. His name is Soma Yukihara, and he wants to be a chef. That is his great aspiration. All shonen protagonists need a great aspiration. His is to be a chef, specifically a chef that is able to beat his dad at a cooking contest because his dad is, like, in his mind, the greatest chef ever. It quickly devolves into some anime nonsense, shall we say. And for this video, what we have done is we read volume 1, which when you are looking at the published volumes of Food Wars, it comes with the first 5 chapters, the bonus little story where it takes a character from the very first chapter and shows what she was up to. And then it also had, as you said, story 0. So the original Food Wars one-shot that ran in Shonen, presumably, which was the author's attempt to get Shonen to pick it up for serialization.
Right.
I don't want to talk about chapter 0 too much at the beginning. I'd rather we start talking about just the first couple of chapters. But yeah, Food Wars has a reputation for being the show where people are really horny about food. And I gotta say, truly, I knew that going in, and yet I was surprised by how quickly the anime horny nonsense began. I'm not even kidding. Page 3, we have some straight up hentai. Now, it's PG-13 hentai, but it is a squid, so it's straight up hentai on page 3. They really don't want you to miss that this is a horny piece.
We jumped straight from 0 to tentacle monster.
Yes, it was very sudden.
Another big thing that I wanted to sort of recommend this one for, because the way that Food Wars talks about cooking and expresses the way its protagonists and side characters feel about cooking and the way its audiences feel about cooking, it has a certain unreality to it that I really enjoy. It's sort of like, I grew up watching Beyblade, which is kind of like Yu-Gi-Oh! In the, this game that children play is the most important thing in the world and will decide the fate of countries. It still had that touch of just, this is definitely a super unrealistic fantasy story. And Food Wars has that too.
There is a food mafia mentioned.
Oh yes, the food mafia is, you haven't even met the crime chefs.
Manga, man.
But yes, it's ultimately about the characters. It's about how these people feel about cooking. To me, a lot of the most interesting manga, and this is why Akane Banashi spoke to me, I love stories that are about artists and the way that they relate to their own art.
Mm-hmm. Which, from the first 5 chapters, you can definitely tell that Food Wars is. It just also makes the very interesting choice to convey that through extremely horny imagery, seemingly for no reason. I will say, I sound like I'm coming down really hard on the horny elements of Food Wars. I am actually prepared to defend the horny elements of Food Wars as an artistic choice, but we will get to that later. First, let's talk about the actual plot. So chapter 1, we meet this young boy. His name is Soma. He's 14, 15 years old, however old you are when you graduate junior high in Japan. And he wants more than anything to apprentice at his dad's family restaurant. He wants to hone his cooking skills there. He has his whole life figured out. But there's a loan shark in town. There's a real estate Mongol lady, and she wants to tear down the restaurant to build, I don't know, a condo or something. And she's like, hey, if you can't make me the best meat dish in all of Japan, then you need to close your doors immediately. And it's very telling to me that the adult man in charge of the restaurant is nowhere to be found when this exchange is happening. This 30-year-old real estate lady is beefing with a 14-year-old for seemingly no reason.
The one who said, if we can't serve you, we'll close our doors,
That was
Soma.
Soma did say that, yes. The fact that she took him seriously, I'm like, ma'am.
The words of this 14-year-old boy are not legally binding.
This is a very classic shonen setup. I am being threatened by an outside force. I am asserting my own strength in my particular discipline, which in shonen is usually martial arts or superpowers, but it can be anything, including cooking. And if I'm not the best to ever do it, then you can take over the world. And then they're like, you're on, kid. And then it turns out the kid is in fact the best to ever do it. Things like Food Wars are funny to me, and I'm aware that this is a genre trope, but this is just something I find funny about the genre, is how seriously they take the melodrama. In Food Wars, truly, we are living in a heightened reality, again, where a woman considers it totally fine and normal to take the bragging of a 14-year-old at face value, and rather than be like, oh, whatever, the kid is just bragging, I'm going to talk to the actual owner of this restaurant.
Let's do the reasonable thing and break into their kitchens,
and
spoil
steal
all of their ingredients,
food.
And then tell them to make us a meat dish.
And if they can't, they'll close their doors. Surely this is what will happen. I'm a very intelligent businesswoman.
It's one of those things where in this chapter we introduce Soma and we introduce sort of the way he relates to cooking. And the big thing we learn about him, because like the first thing we see is him basically like laughing at how bad something tasted.
Yes, that is the thing. I go on and on about the anime nonsense in this, but it does have some genuinely very good, concise character work. The very first thing, before all of this with the real estate lady, he is experimenting with food, and then he's also losing cooking competitions to his dad. Those are the two most important things about him right then and there. It is that he really wants to beat his dad but can't, and that he really likes to experiment with food, and that he thinks finding a new flavor is fun, whether or not that flavor is good.
Exactly.
And then we get the whole, real estate lady. She comes in, and, even though all of his ingredients are spoiled, he happened to be carrying a bag of groceries when he walked in and discovered the restaurant destroyed. And he's like, okay, I will make you a meat dish. He makes her some kind of like bacon roasted potatoes that he calls it like a faux pork chop, basically.
Yes.
And the thing is, it's really good. It's so good, in fact, that real estate mafia lady and all of her henchmen have their clothes metaphorically blown off of their bodies, because, in case you forgot, the third most important thing about Food Wars is that it is horny.
And let's take a moment to talk from there about specifically the attention to detail in the art.
Yes.
When it comes to different elements of Food Wars.
So the art in Food Wars is good. I'm not being facetious. It is good art. However, there are 3 kinds of art in Food Wars. There is normal panel to panel, just like character interaction. There is food, and there is horny. And there is a noticeable difference in fidelity between the food and the horny versus the panel to panel action.
And that's where it comes down to, again, kind of the way that this manga relates to its weird, sexy undertones. Going back to the pseudo roast, because the most lovingly rendered parts of this chapter are, one, the shots of the cooking and the shots of the food, which you want in a cooking manga. And then there is the part where they're trying the food, and basically this lady is having a reaction that if she had that normally in a restaurant, she would probably be asked to leave the premises.
Yes. Nobody reacts to food normally in this world, which, again, is partly because this is a heightened reality shonen. But the food is so good that they become just horny messes on the floor. And he's like, ha, I've saved the restaurant.
And in that way, so here's where I'm like, and this might all end up getting cut out. If it does, I'll laugh. But in that way, kind of, Food Wars is comparing the act of preparing a meal for someone to sexually servicing someone, basically. And placing the person who is preparing that food in a position of power over the person who is eating it.
And see, I don't disagree. I think you're correct. And again, I said I will defend the artistic choice of this presentation. And that's exactly why. Because, like, a lot of media that is about chefs and about cooking, or a lot of actual chefs, do talk that way about how, you know, food is communication, food is art, food is sharing part of yourself with other people. Food is extremely important culturally. Food has so many different, like, memories associated with it, personal memories, family memories, cultural memories. Food is a very important thing. And I totally get the choice as an artist to be like, you know, the best way that I can think of to impart the importance of food to my readers is to compare it to sex. That doesn't make it any less ridiculous. I'm just saying I understand the vision.
And here's my final element on that before I move on to something else. My final element just on the horniness before we can just comment on it in passing as it happens. Part of what makes it work for me is the particular just shamelessness that Food Wars conducts itself with. A lesser story might pursue that metaphor of food as a conveyance of pleasure and would be a coward about it. Food Wars is absolutely shameless and says, no, we're going all out, and it may do it in the most juvenile way possible, but it does it. And there's something about that I cannot help but respect.
It definitely commits. It commits full force to the bit.
But yeah, we kind of get that sort of a slice of the kinds of stories that Food Wars is going to be about in that first chapter.
I do love, though, it sets up very, very well and clearly, this is who Soma is, this is his world, and you're gearing up for, like, a series of stories where you have different customers coming to this restaurant and he has to meet different culinary-based challenges. And then his dad shows up and is like, hey, kid, I'm gonna close this place down for, like, 2 to 3 years. And leave the country without you. Goodbye. And it turns out what we thought was the premise of this manga is not, in fact, the premise of this manga. The premise of this manga is not 15-year-old boy works at his family restaurant and hones his craft. The premise of this manga is 15-year-old boy goes to prestigious culinary school. and hones his craft. And it is there that, to me, Food Wars really does start to shine, because that's when we get to meet the rest of the cast.
And we do see at the very end of that first chapter, we do get a glimpse of the next sort of member of our expanding cast, who is kind of going to be framed for the near future as sort of an antagonist figure.
Irina Nakiri.
We meet Erina, and she is introduced very interestingly to me, because her introduction has her basically taking the exact inverse stance toward food as Soma was taking at the beginning of this chapter. Because for him, the process and the failure is as important as the end result.
He literally says, oh man, that peanut butter and squid, it was so bad. It was so bad, it was funny. And then it hard cuts to Erina spitting out a bowl of soup and saying, this was awful. It's not funny at all how awful it is. In chapter 2, we graduate to the horniness existing on page 2. And this is now a point where I'm going to talk briefly about chapter 0. Because in chapter 1 of normal Food Wars, of not the one shot, the visual metaphor of how food makes you feel being depicted through very horny visual language is something that happens to multiple characters. This is just kind of how we visually show the effect of food on people. And then in chapter 2, we see Erina, we see her experience a soup, and she like has this vision of herself in a hot spring, and she's bathing underneath a waterfall, and it's really like sensual, and as you would expect, a drawing of a big-breasted anime girl in a hot spring. And then there's a gorilla. And the gorilla is just kind of there. And then she blows up at the chef who gave her this food. It's like, it was like I was trying to bathe in a hot spring while being creeped on by a gorilla. And it is at that point that you realize Erina takes those visual representations extremely seriously. And I think in the original one-shot, the implication was that that's something that only she does and only she experiences. It is, in fact, the very first panels of chapter 0 are not of Soma, they are of Erina. And it is talked about how she has the best palate. She has the divine palate. And her sense of taste is so exquisite. She literally sees images of what the food makes her feel. That explanation is not in chapter 2 because I think it was later decided that that would not be unique to Erina, that everybody who eats the food would experience that. However, Erina does still verbalize it in a way that nobody else really does.
Yes.
And part of that is because she does have this, they call it the divine palate. She has the most sensitive, perfect palate known to man. Ever since childhood, she has been tasting high cuisine, high quality dishes to basically judge and critique them. Even though she is only a first-year student at this culinary school, she's also like low-key a teacher and staff member. That's how good her palate is. We very clearly get our first major theme established in chapter 2 through Erina and her divine palate, and it is elitism. Basically, Soma goes to this school. Anytime he tells one of the other incoming students, I work at a small family restaurant that we like own, you know, in a rundown part of town, everybody scoffs at him. They're all like, how dare you come here, you peasant. I don't want anything to do with you.
The guy he is sitting next to literally kicks him off of the bench.
We once again return to, this is heightened shonen world, and everything is overly serious, and there's a food mafia, and they will kill you. And then the entrance exam, it turns out, even though she's a first-year student, we once again return to the very common manga trope of why does the student council president have this much power. The entrance exam is being judged by Erina, and it's because of her divine palate. And she basically goes in and she walks into this huge class of hopeful attendees to this culinary school, and she says, I am giving you the choice to walk away right now. And everybody but Soma leaves, because they all know that they're not capable of pleasing the divine palate of Erina Nakiri. But Soma is not from this world, and he doesn't know who she is, and is just like, so all we have to do is cook a dish with eggs as the main ingredient, right? That's what you said?
And from what you know about his character, you know, even if he did know who she was, and if he was from this world,
he wouldn't care. He would do it anyway.
Still cook for her anyway.
Mm-hmm. He cooks an egg dish for her, and again, this is where we come into, this is a story about elitism in the art world, in the culinary world, because she's like, okay, you have to make a dish with eggs as the main ingredient. What are you going to make for me? And there's a name for it that I don't remember now in Japanese because I didn't write it down. Basically, he's making eggs over rice. The type of eggs over rice he's making, from the impression that I get, it's convenience store food that you usually don't order at a restaurant. You buy it instant. You like microwave it. And
it's like if you demanded a gourmet meal and they prepared you like a bowl of Easy Mac.
Yeah, like that's the impression. But then the chef says, no. It won't be ordinary Easy Mac. It's going to be my special Easy Mac. And it turns out...
It's going to be hard Mac.
What it turns out is he is making a very technically difficult macaroni and cheese, but then serving it in an Easy Mac cup. This is something I appreciate about Food Wars as well. It isn't just invested in making the food look pretty. Soma explains his process every single time he makes something, and it's all correct. Like, it's all correct culinary technique. He basically he slow roasts some chicken wings, and he is making this super gelatinous broth, and then, like, quickly cooling it to turn into little gelatin cubes to basically make he calls it the changing rice.
So, is it a furikake? Is
that sounds correct. Yes, a furikake. He says, I call it the changing furikake rice because it's something that changes form when you pour it from its instant cup onto the hot rice. Because basically what he has scrambled egg bits and these gelatin cubes. And then when you pour that onto the hot rice melts the gelatin and it oozes into the rice and creates this amazing flavor. I will say it's a little absurd to me that Miss Divine High Class Palate, when she smells him cooking and she starts to get a little hot and bothered because this is still Food Wars and we still have to be horny, it does seem a little funny to me that she's specifically calling out, I've never had a flavor like this before. Roasted chicken. And I'm like, ma'am, how have you survived as a tasting expert for 15 years if roasted chicken is getting you hot and bothered?
That story, that chapter is a good setup for just kind of what the dynamic is going to be between Soma and Erina for the rest of this story. Mm-hmm. Because, as you said, it's elitism. This brings us into another thing, which is the character of Soma being, for all intents and purposes, kind of a jerk.
Yeah, Soma is mean.
And I think this works for his character because, in a fashion, he is just someone who cares a lot about the art he makes, about the process of pursuing that art. And really, the only thing you can do to make Soma not like you is disrespect cooking. Mm-hmm. Like, Soma doesn't even care if you disrespect him, or even if you call his cooking Maybe we'll cut that out.
I know, I thought that you wanted to keep it PG. We have been talking about sex a lot, though.
Oh, yeah. But if you disrespect the art of cooking, he cares about cooking a lot.
The interesting thing about him entering the school is that there's this kind of, like, idea of this school as being something that most people don't graduate, which as a former teacher just tells me it's a bad school. I understand that the point is to be like, this is the elite and only the best of the best make it here. The dean literally tells a group of incoming students, like, 90% of you are rocks who only exist to grind the 10% of you who are diamonds into perfection. This is terrible pedagogical ideology.
I was going to say, you're just sitting here like, this is terrible pedagogy.
I want him fired immediately. This is not how you run a school, sir.
And
but the interesting thing is that all of these people have this background in high cuisine and in training in high cuisine, and they come from these restaurant empires. But in his speech, Soma literally straight up says, I don't respect any of you. And he doesn't respect them, not because they come from high class backgrounds, but because they don't have experience cooking for customers. And he has been cooking for customers for over 10 years. And not only has he been working on his craft for over 10 years, he has been working on specifically pleasing customers. And that is something that all of these people who have all of this like culinary background and food science background, something that they don't have is hands-on experience in serving customers and in problem solving, which segues us into the last chapter that we read, chapter 5, is them in class, and he gets paired with Megumi. The thing about Megumi is she is the best chef from her home village, but she's really having a hard time like keeping up with the elitism of this fancy culinary school, which I don't think I wrote down the name of the school. I sure didn't, but it's basically the idea that she is this close to failing. She is this close to flunking out of this fancy culinary school, and her first impression of Soma was really negative. She was like, he's like really mean and intense, and I just need to keep my head down and stay away from him. And then they get paired to do a test together. And the test is some French cooking, and it is a dish that Soma has never heard of. And everybody has heard, even she has heard of it, because she has studied high cuisine. She's just not very good at it yet, but she has at least studied it. And the thing that I really like about this chapter, because it's kind of your classic, oh no, bullies ruined something about the entrance exam and now you have to overcome the problem because they get sabotaged by some bullies. And she is convinced, well, that's it. I'm going to flunk out. I'm going to have to go home. I've disappointed my family and everybody will be sad. And he is just like, it's all right. I got some alternative ingredients. We'll make it work. Again, it's all correct food science. They basically are making a meat roast and it hasn't roasted for long enough. And they don't have enough time to start over because their first cut got ruined. And he basically uses a honey glaze to break down the fat content of the roast faster and tenderize it more quickly than the slow roast would. And the title of this chapter is The Chef Who Never Smiles, because the French cuisine instructor is the chef who never smiles. He's cold and exacting, and he has a pass-fail system. Like, he doesn't, like, the grades, I don't remember what the letters are in Japanese, but, like, basically it's like A, B, C, D, F, but he only has A and F. It's like you either you pass or you fail. If you don't get an A on this dish, you have failed. And the chef who never smiles, when he tries Soma's dish, smiles. And he says, "Sir, I am giving you an A, but understand, I wish I could give you higher." And we are still kind of in that realm of like, shonen main character boy is the best to ever do it and can do no wrong. But the way that Soma succeeds, I really liked, because when the chef who never smiles realizes that he used honey to make the dish work, he goes, yes, there were only about 3 or 4 things he could have done to save this dish, and using honey was one of them. And when Soma explains to the baffled bullies who are like, how did you beat our sabotage? How did you know that specific chemical process that the chef just said would happen? Soma's response is, well, I read in a magazine once that pineapple juice makes meat really tender. But whole pineapples are expensive, so we never have them in the shop. So I started experimenting with other things to see if there were other things that were similar to pineapple juice that would do the same thing. And honey is the one that worked the best and was the cheapest. And what I really like about Soma's approach to cooking is it's a very hands-on, experimental, like trial and error type of thing. And yet he arrives at the same answer as the fancy people with culinary degrees. They know this because of book knowledge. They have studied extensively, whereas Soma knows because he tried. And he probably failed. There were probably a lot of really gross attempts of using other fruit juices on meats that didn't turn out very well, that he laughed very hard about. But he landed on honey, and he knows that it works, but he also knows that it's accessible and cheap. And again, that comes back to right now, because we're still in the this guy is the coolest ever shonen protagonist boy, don't you want to be him stage of manga. He is basically proving that this knowledge-only elitism will not serve the students of this school, as well as his years of direct customer experience.
And I will warn you of this. I won't say Soma never fails, because that's not quite accurate. What I will say is that he is a character who failure does not really affect that much. Mm-hmm. So narratively, having him fail isn't as useful as it would be for other characters, maybe. And so for Soma, failure is a step to success. And that's where one of the big things pops up. And to me, it is kind of one of the things I could respect if someone said they don't like Food Wars for this reason. Soma is kind of a static character. Mm-hmm. He doesn't really ever change because he doesn't need to change.
Yeah.
And the characters who have arcs are more just experiencing those arcs because their worldview is being challenged by Soma's confidence. And for the most part, that works. It's a Paddington type story. Mm-hmm. If Paddington was a bit of a jerk and a high schooler who cooks things. I like that for what it is, just because of, like, if this were like a different kind of story, if this wasn't like an art sort of based story and was more of a, okay, we have to fight to save the world, that would not be as fun.
It would be kind of frustrating that he's right from the very beginning of the manga and never really has to learn the ways in which he's wrong.
And for most of the story, even though like these cooking competitions are going to be happening, because you haven't seen in the main story any of the real cooking competitions yet.
Correct.
But as these are happening, even though like the cooking competitions will get stakes attached to them, for the most part, the real thing that is being decided is kind of like the artistic integrity of whoever is competing.
And Soma's artistic integrity is intact from the moment he enters the school.
Correct.
And therefore, he kind of has nowhere to go.
Basically, Soma does not need to experience character growth, which is why the types of failure he experiences aren't really that type of failure, like the break your heart kind of failure. Mm-hmm. The kinds of growth he experiences are just, oh, I didn't know that. I better use that.
Which, I don't know how I feel about that specifically in the context of a shonen protagonist. I am not done reading Food Wars. I will at least read volume 2. I don't know whether I will read beyond that. And I think the main reason for that so far is I kind of don't care yet. Does that make sense?
I think it does, and I wouldn't expect you to care yet.
I will defend the horny art as a stylistic choice and as a visual metaphor. I will talk about how it, depicts food in a beautifully detailed and artistic way. God, I wish this was in color. This would be so good in color. But the art is very good. The food science is really interesting. The, elitism versus home experience, all of that stuff that I just talked about, that's all great. And I kind of don't need to be told it again. And I don't know whether or not it's if Soma does not change as a character, it's really going to be up to the supporting cast to grab me and make me care about what they're doing, because otherwise I've already gotten everything I needed from the first 5 chapters of Food Wars.
And to kind of summarize the things that I think makes Food Wars really work is, 1, the actual titular Food Wars, the Shokugeki matches. Mm-hmm. Those are really interesting. I've told you how I really like in manga the way that, because you as the artist have full license really over just time. Mm-hmm. And that means you can do things that wouldn't work in other mediums. That's why I really like the way Akane Banashi's performance sequences play out, and the way that Food Wars works with its Shokugeki matches, I think is very similar. Mm. The other thing I really like about Food Wars, and this is why I'm like, this is a good one to read if you're not super experienced in manga yet, Food Wars is one of the great examples of the absurdly powerful student council.
As we have already seen,
yes.
Why is the first-year student given the power to admit or not admit potential new students?
And we will see so much bullcrap from the student council in the coming parts of the story. Mm-hmm. And that is one of my favorite things about Food Wars. To me, Food Wars is at its strongest when you just have the cast together and they actually get to go and cook and have disagreements and agreements about
interpersonal
how that should
drama.
Work.
Again, it is kind of, in some ways, it's kind of a character study right now of these different chefs and the way that they approach cooking.
And we're introducing everything so far. I think my final thing to say on this first volume, because to me, one of the things that really brings it together, it's that part where Soma is talking on the phone with his dad. Mm-hmm. And his dad, he's telling Soma, well, here, I'll tell you what the true secret to being a great chef is. Find someone who makes you want to prepare the best food you've ever made. Mm-hmm. And to me, that kind of also expresses the spirit that Soma already kind of cooks for, because Soma is not trying to make just the best thing in the world because he wants to make it. He has in mind the experience of whoever is eating that food whenever he makes it.
Again, we come back around. It is food as a love language.
If you keep going with it, you'll see sort of a formula of new characters introduced as villain. Soma has a food battle with them. They have their worldview shooketh, and now they are friend. If you are not a fan of that formula, then maybe Food Wars won't be for you. Mm-hmm. I think it's worth reading, just because it's one of those things where I think sort of your 3 out of 5s and your 4 out of 5s, it's good to just sort of experience those and to see sort of what kind of things people are experiencing and enjoying.
Mm-hmm. We will see. I'll read volume 2 and we'll decide whether or not the this is a manga that I'm going to slot into my repertoire, or whether it's one that I will just leave behind.
In the battle of Taylor versus the Horny, will Horny win?
I always win. I'm asexual. I'm immune. So yeah, that was Meet the Manga Food Wars. I definitely have some more to get through before I make my final decision on it, but for now, I'm gonna keep reading. We'll see what happens.
When I give you another recommendation, I will try to make it less horny.
No, you won't.
Really, I won't need to try because, like, Food Wars, we've set a very low bar here. So.
That is true. One of my notes literally says, I'm starting to think this author is incapable of metaphor without horny visual aid. And that's Food Wars.
That is Food Wars.
I do hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, there are YouTube buttons that you can click down at the bottom of the screen to show us that you did in fact enjoy it. Please click them. They do YouTube things. We would love that very much. And if you would like to recommend another manga for us to try, definitely put that down in the comments as well. And tell me whether or not Food Wars is too horny for you. Until next time, my name is Taylor.
I'm Stin.
And this has been The Bookcases.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye. Peter, what is this?
Peter, what is this?
Peter. God, Peter. You're such a good chef. You make eggs on rice really good.